Hello and welcome to the first video for your non-referential painting. My name is Eric, and today we're going to be talking about a little bit of my own process. Remember, the non-referential assignment is pretty open-ended. As long as you are not referencing reality in any way, you can almost paint anything. As long as you're spending that allotted time that we've talked about, and you're working on those fundamentals of design. Line, color, balance, movement, all those important things that every piece of art has, that in a non-referential world actually become more important. If you're painting a portrait or you're painting a landscape, something from reality, that has some merit. A viewer could look at the painting and say, oh, that looks like something in reality. Therefore, it must be a successful painting. Craft takes sort of the quality and runs with it. With a non-referential, and I think a lot of people have issues with non-referential work that don't look at a lot of art, is that sometimes craft is not the main focus of the work. Sometimes it's much looser application of paint, maybe more visceral impasto marks, maybe application with the knife itself. What we're going to be doing here today is talking a little bit about my own process, how I would create a painting. Much of my work is non-referential or abstract. My canvas here is a little bit different than what you have most likely at your own house. I have a panel behind this, so mostly you would have just stretcher bars. I have a piece of wood, like a full piece of wood that I actually stretch canvas over. It becomes a little bit more substantial, a little bit heavier, and it's actually pretty thick too. I do a 2-inch thick. This is just tape here on the side. The reason it's black, I use black gesso, the same thing that you would find in the store of a white gesso, sort of standard gesso. It's just black. Same thing, it just has a pigment added to it. I like working with a darker value first. One of my least favorite things to do in a painting is look at a white painting, which much of the sort of cheaper canvases are just primed in white. So I like black. And with the wood behind it, it's never gonna start to sag at all, so the sort of archival nature of the painting, this will last, hopefully, hundreds of years, if it's primed and cared for properly, doesn't get wet, etc. Okay, so I have done some sketches, some thumbnail sketches, which I have always encouraged you to do, and I'm not really sure which one I'm going with. I think I'm gonna start with this one here and see how it goes. Just doing a little bit of my own process and thinking about space, color, and movement. I am interested in some sort of perspective in this piece. I'm not really sure yet what it would be. This would be sort of a one-point perspective where things are pushing towards the center. I'm not sure I like it as much. And then this one, you could have done it in a 1-point, but I think I'm going to do it in a 3-point, where these are actually going to be receding to vanishing points low, and then we'll have a third vanishing point high. If you've never done linear perspective, you probably should have done that in drawing, but if you haven't, 3-point perspective is a little bit different from maybe a 1 or 2-point perspective, which you might be more familiar with, but it's really not that much different. So I'm going to set up my source and I'm going to start looking here. How I paint many times is I sort of create line work through tape, and this is all masking tape in different thicknesses. This is 1/8 inch, this is 1/4 inch, this is 1/2 inch, this is inch, they have 2 inch, they have 3 inch, they have 4 and 5 inch. I like tape. I think that it gives you a nice clean line, and it helps me speed up sort of my process, and it gives a really nice line quality. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask certain areas with the tape. I'm going to seal that tape with a thing called matte medium here. It is a clear liquid that is an additive for acrylic paint. Sometimes if you have too much luster or too much shiny brightness in your paint, you can add a little bit of matte medium, and it will matte that color without reducing too much of the actual color. So that's good. It still has a nice opacity, doesn't sort of transparency, doesn't change. So we're going to sketch some stuff out here. You may notice I have my canvas set up. I'm actually going to move it a little bit this way. I think I moved it when I was showing you. My goal is, you may notice I have 3 pieces of tape here, 1, 2, 3, Each one has a little dot on it. It might be hard to see on that screen. I'm going to be using those as vanishing points for a 3-point perspective for this first element in the center. Then I'm going to tape off and show you how to do. Then I'll probably go from there. So I'm going to be starting with not my smallest, a little bit larger, because I'm thinking of line quality. This is another really good tool if you've never seen a T-square. The really good thing about a T-square is that if you're looking for something and you want it to be straight and you really want it to be a 90-degree angle, you can just line up that T-square on a flat surface and slide it, and it stays in one space, vertical or horizontal. So it's a really nice tool to have when you get that straight edge. Maybe just scraped a little bit of my gesso, not a big deal. But I am going to be using this to try and measure some of my lines as I go. I might just be using my tape as well. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so black canvas, using black gesso. And now I'm going to try and plan an element here. So give or take, we can start sort of our centralized area. Then I'm going to have 2 more that are going all the way up. One thing about this is it does waste a little bit of tape, but there's a way to continue to reuse that, so we will. When in doubt, I'm going to go a little bit past where I think it might need to be. It's going to be lower than my first mark. And then the third one will also be fanning out this way. At some point, I'm interested in getting this accurate, but I don't really care. It's absolutely perfect. The vantage point is making it appear that this is closer and larger and that this is further away and smaller. You'll see once we get going here a little bit further. Okay, so now we're going to hit, so this shape has a total of 9 lines, and we've done 3 receding here. Now we're going to have 3 receding to here and 3 receding to here. So we'll start with the top portion here. These ones I'm not 100% sure with yet. I think they're going to be okay. And little curvatures like this we can take care of too. So this is going to go all the way, I'm going to do it further out. See, I do want it to be dramatic and then sort of level out once it's out here. 1. It's going to be over here. 2. Okay, yeah, I think it's pretty close. If it's not perfect, we can shift it a little bit without too much worry. It's pretty dramatic though, so I'm going to move it up just a little bit. So as I'm going through this process, I'm basically drawing with tape, and I'm remembering that if I don't like a line, like this line here, became a little bit loose here at the bottom when I ripped it, sort of curved on me. Pretty easily bring it back up, flatten it back down. Okay, 1 vanishing point, 1, 2 will be something like this. Go in that same spot. And I'll clean these lines up when the time comes. I'll just grab an X-Acto. Okay. And then we have 1 more coming across. We have to extend this line a little bit. But this coming all the way across like that. See, it's going to be a pretty dramatic perspective. That's alright, I like dramatic stuff. Okay, so now we've planned the top here. All this is going to get trimmed. I'm using this, I'm coming here, I'm finding that same spot, and then I'm using this to go back down. So it's going to be oblong when I'm looking at the shape right here. That's okay. That's better than it being too symmetrical. Yeah, it's going to definitely be larger on that side. The second portion's easier because you're just building into the first, and you already have areas to start from, and hypothetically areas to end in certain areas, like this one here. But this should all sort of line up like that, now that we have it. Okay, last one's going to go all the way across. Maybe a little bit longer. Let's maybe see if we can grab one of these and recycle it. Because I don't know if this is a perfect space, but I'm sort of liking how it's looking. So this is going to be coming all the way across here and really getting much smaller to give the illusion that it's further away. Trim those off a little bit, put them to the side. So it's kind of hard to see, but the space is starting to get developed. The shape is pretty basic at this point. It hasn't been pushed too far. But when I grab a knife, if I could find a knife here, all I'm going to do is sort of trim this up. Now that I have my intersection sort of planned. And another nice thing about having a wooden board behind your canvas is that there's almost no chance, unless you're very aggressively cutting, that you're going to cut into your canvas, which is a huge bummer when that happens, because there's not much you can do when your canvas has been cut. At that point, you're sort of at the mercy of the canvas, depending on how bad you cut it, losing its tightness and starting to fray and fall apart. It's no good. So you have to be very, very careful with that. But it's another reason I use that wood to help protect my canvas. So my lines are cleaning up pretty nicely. Sometimes when they overlap, it's a little bit weird. You have to think about how the line would look if you were observing something. So a little bit of a curve here. We're going to cut the top first. We may have to fix the bottom. Okay, so I don't think this is dramatic enough. So I'm going to shift this a little bit. Pull it down even further. Maybe even further. Yeah, this is when, even if the perspective is telling you one thing, if you're interested in that kind of thing in a non-referential piece, which you might not be, you might be thinking more of a flat space and just mark making, you can over or under exaggerate things to make them more interesting. It is your painting, do what you want. As long as there's a reason you're doing it. Hopefully, the reasons would be balance, movement, value, color. It would be informed by any one of those, or a mixture of those fundamentals of design. So I'm going to shift this. Unfortunately, I have to shift kind of a lot of stuff, but it's not really that big a deal at this point. If I was trying to shift later in the game, after I have matte medium these, after I've sort of sealed these down, it is a huge headache. So as long as you're doing things in order, if you wanted to try and re-emulate my sort of technique here. This last line's a little bit goofy. Pull this one too. This corner's functioning better. Put it to the side. side and see how this pulls back here. Maybe not quite as dramatic. Maybe just as dramatic. And technically this would be coming from this direction, but we're going to flatten it out just a little bit. And then we trim it up. Once again, if you are attempting to cut anything on just canvas, be extremely careful. As when you don't have something hard behind it, it can very easily go through there. So I'm thinking this still might be a little bit dramatic. Kind of like it, but I think this is better placed. So I'll just put that right back down where it was. And then maybe push this a little bit flatter. Something like that. I can actually see it better sometimes in the camera, when I look back at the camera. There we go. That's nice. So, starting out in a three-point perspective and then flattening things out almost to an isometric. Isometric means parallel rather than going back towards a vanishing point. You can see here these are almost parallel. But a little bit more dramatic on the top. So, things are looking good. I'm going to seal this tape. Just to show you that process. There are going to be other things in this painting, so I'm going to stay tight on here because actually adding that matte medium does change the tone of the black, and I think I am going to add some other things, maybe even some things overlapping, so I do have to be a little bit careful, but I'd like to show you, at least on the internal here, what I'm doing. So yeah, matte medium, if you can see here, is just a clear liquid. I say clear, it's actually kind of whitish. Semi-opaque. That is usually used to mix directly into acrylic paint for the luster, or to decrease the luster, how shiny it is. But I use it to seal my tape. It creates an almost clear space on top. It does change it a little bit, but it really, really helps. A lot of people come in, they get really excited about tape. They want to come in, they just start throwing tape, start painting, ripping tape, throwing more tape, ripping tape. It can work in a looser application if you're okay with bleeds. But my work tends to be fairly tight. And when it's tight, sort of the question of craft comes into play. So I want my paintings to be really tight and clean. So this is the first image. Who knows, I might add another small couple elements in the background, or I might sort of just start from a basic shape like this and kind of make more decisions in the moment. Sometimes the intuitive decisions are better. So sometimes I can come up with a color palette. I'm already seeing maybe some lime greens, maybe some yellows, not sure yet. I think I'm going to go maybe a little bit cooler rather than warmer. But once again, that's the nice experimenting stage. I can sort of add tones, and I can slowly build tone on top, which you'll see in the next video.